I'd like to first start by, when we're talking about, a lot of people talk about made in India, and made in India, some people feel that made in India does good for us, some people feel that it's shoddy. Actually, many of us know that top-notch engineering with world-class creativity from one-stop shop, process-integrated design centers is being offered from India today. Packaging for top brands is capable of being developed for the international non-India markets at a cost that is almost 30% cheaper than first world and even much faster. Then what happens? However, packaging design is a process that moves from a designer's creative vision to the skill of technologists and capabilities of machines and materials to remotely distributed retail points successfully. So we have the best of designers, we have the best of technologists, we have best of materials. But something goes wrong, there is a high risk. The risk is the high risk of what is commonly called communication gap, because there are many silos. There's the designer working in one direction, there's the technologist working in one direction, and is this seamless, or shall we say there is a gap? So I would like to call my presentation Mind the Gaps. To illustrate what goes on between design and production, it reminds me of this particular incident, of this very innocuous, simple looking design which had been produced by a graphic designer of the Revital capsule. Now it looks very simple that you have to print two colors on gold, but surprisingly this led to enormous rejections when it was actually produced. And the reason is because there was the two ovals had to sit concentrically within each other, and this whole process was on non-absorbent foil board surface, and it had to be printed by web gravure. So there was a very surprising element that came out of this particular production. And similarly, I think I'm not the only one that went through this kind of experience or this kind of shock. I think most of my colleagues, and I tried to put together a catalogue of some of the things that my other colleagues have faced from time to time. So I'm just going to catalogue some of that. For example, there was this particular development of when a bottle for balm was actually, glass bottles had this neck between the bottle, and there's a sort of instep. Now somebody's idea was that why don't we do away with the instep, it'll be much easier to take out the balm. But in the process there was the thread, and this had to run on a 140 bottles per minute line where the threads were crashing into each other and the threads got broken. This was something that nobody had thought of. This is a kind of gap which happens between design and production. A shortcut decision under pressure from brand managers to use metallized film to substitute aluminium foil. This was done under pressure from brand managers without going through testing protocols, proved fatal for this particular product. Commercial supplies had to be recalled. Metallized film just could not provide adequate moisture barrier. So surprisingly, these type of shortcut decisions lead to disasters. A unique effervescent tablet in a PP tube launched for the first time. At last minute, before commercial supply of the labels, just the label, somebody thought that why don't we substitute mirror coat instead of chromo paper. Now nobody had thought through or tested the mirror coat paper. The mirror coat paper has a high stiffness, and in the warehouse itself the labels were falling off the tube. Very simple decision, but disastrous decision. A wrong barcode found its way into the commercial print run of the laminate of our popular pet food. Another time we had an incident with the misprinted protein percentages. So again, content management, which had been spoken earlier. Here is an example of what went on when you do a seal strength trial of a laminate in the lab. The seal strength may be good, but when you put that on a machine, you find another parameter. And here was a decision which was taken in a hurry with lab testing of a laminate, which failed on the line. And here is an example of how things can go wrong at the shop floor level, when 30 tons supply of metallized laminates in 40 rolls of material, 37 were delaminating at the green bond, 3 were okay. This was a mystery, and this was a technical mystery, but it arose from an incomplete specification where the unwind direction of the film rolls had not been correctly specified. In the end, a minor goof such as this ballooned into a costly and irreversible material rejection. These are gaps. Secondary packaging industry in this industry is largely unorganized. I apologize to any secondary materials suppliers sitting here, but this makes it most treacherous as a potential area for goof-ups. CFB suppliers are notorious for taking quality shortcuts, poor quality, incorrect flute sizes, high moisture content, or insufficient adhesive usage are common in reasons for spoiling. So if you look at it, actually realizing the design, I think in my experience or in experience of many of my colleagues from the industry, there are actually, there's one reason for communication gap can be due to ignorance. The designer is not fully aware of what's going to happen to the production of that pack down the line. Example, let's say, okay, I'm just cataloging first the 4 reasons that I've cataloged. Ignorance, goof up, we'll come to that, defect, and the retail environment. Let's look at ignorance first. So here is a bottle which seems to have been designed, maybe it's a collaboration between a designer and an engineer. So somebody thought that a square base will be very stable on the line, but the overall effect is a patchwork geometry. There are conflicting aesthetics here. So here is a bottle which the designer has designed very elegantly, thin, long, tall bottle, but has it met the challenges of the filling line? Will this bottle stand on the shop shelf? Will it topple over in the bathroom of the consumer and waste most of the product? So here is product which has been aesthetically thought of in one way but not thought through. Here is another bottle which has been developed with a very long neck. Now when you try to torque such a bottle, along with the cap, the neck is also going to twist. So is it really as functional as it could be? Could that curve have been changed a little bit to make it more, maintain the elegance, the swan-like neck that we are trying to see here, but still maintain a certain level of production on the line. Here is a bottle which has been design over detail. So here the football shape on top, on the cap, is actually hampering the capping and the induction foil sealing which takes place inside the cap. That curve could have been slightly different without losing the aesthetics and yet been able to maintain an equally interesting jar. So here, this was a collection of examples that go on about where the designer hasn't thought through the whole process. But then there's another type of thing which happens is on the shop floor, which is called the goof up. And the goof up actually happens when a lot of people here would be familiar with these things, so I'll just race through. Grain direction often leads to problems. Eye mark position and color leads to problems. And these are things which you tend to, in the big picture you forget about it and you don't know what a monster it is when it actually comes into production. Barcode contrast, position and size. Incorrect dimensioning. In this particular case, the tube is much shorter. There's about a half-inch gap. And you can see this picture probably doesn't show it so well, but that carton gets crushed. Ullage, the amount of empty space to be left, particularly for powders and liquids. And excess space in the outer carton resulting in, distortion of the geometry of the outer carton. So these are goof-ups at the production stage or at the development stage. Then you come to what can be plain defects. And those defects can, of course, they are more manageable at the shop floor level, but certainly they need cataloging in terms of label peel-off is an example. Color matching and calibration, colors don't match correctly. Pantone shades, particularly spot colors, which have to be done. And then we come to the defects or the the defects, which are production defects. Here is when sometimes you have a food product and it's been packed in a freshly laminated pouch, and the smell of the adhesive actually gets into the food, so taint. Manufacturing process defect, defects of molding, flash, print cracking, molding defects in cap, too much text and print filling. And the last, of course, is the gap about the retail environment. We design in very posh offices, but we actually don't think about the way the shop's conditions are and how these the packs are actually going to be sitting in the shop and be thrown one upon the other. So these are glimpses of the way our shop conditions are, and this is how we should be planning. Retail ready, but is it retail ready for the Indian shops? So finally, I'd like to say that there is this phenomena of sensation transference. These people's perceptions of products and services are directly related to aesthetic design. This relationship is called sensation design, transference, and this was actually, in the 1950s, it was propounded as a marketing theory. Today, winning organizations use high-grade packaging finish to produce champion products. That's what we should aim for, but we need to streamline the production process from end to end, from design to production, and that's how we can go from box to box office. Thank you.